discussion. So we will be talking about the urgency of democracy. We will have numerous questions. Each questions speaker can speak about 3 minutes. You are free to give your opinions on the current political scenario. You can, of course, take out or you can call out the political parties if you wish to, as long as it's a beneficial and a healthy conversation. That's all we are looking forward to. And an understanding of how people can go ahead, right? Any questions regarding how we are going to have it? Or is this okay?
So who moderates the questions?
Me, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
All right. Just 2 more minutes and then we'll begin exactly at 3 o'clock. We can do that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, hi. A very good afternoon to one and all who have joined. Um, we have gathered to speak about our second idealistic discourse for a better tomorrow. This is in continuation to the previous conversation that we had regarding our forthcoming elections. The conversation was on are we prepared for the forthcoming elections. Today, the topic that we are going to talk about is the urgency of democracy. This is organized by St. Joseph's Vaz College, which is affiliated to Goa University, situated in Kartale. Before we move to the actual discussion, I would like to take a moment to introduce our esteemed panelist, Professor Lakshmi Subramanian, currently a professor of history at BITS Pilani Goa campus. She has had a long and distinguished teaching career at various levels, from undergraduate to postgraduate, in India and overseas. She has numerous lists of publications, both books and peer-reviewed journal articles. Dr. Alaknanda Sringare, Assistant Professor at Department of Political Science, Goa University. She has authored and co-authored books about Indian and Goan politics and has been a coordinator for various surveys conducted by the university on behalf of the Chief Electoral Officer Goa as well as the Election Commission of India. We also have among us Advocate Diya Shekhar, a public figure and advocate, a political strategist in Goa, Maharashtra, and other states of India, founder of Diya Foundation, an NGO that works for the underprivileged people, contested Goa State Assembly elections in 2017 as an independent candidate from Shiroda constituency. We also have Mr. Marlon Cardozo, a second year student in science at St. David's College, Mopsa. Marlon is also a musician, singer, actor, and an athlete. And I'm Joseph Fernandez, assistant professor at St. Joseph House College. The topic of discussion today, as mentioned, is the urgency of democracy. And when we look at democracy, we can also view it as diversity. The diversity that is present in the modern progressive world, for some reason, it's inclining towards a divide. And the conversation for today is going to be about how do we bridge this divide that is important for our democracy in the literal meaning of democracy. Um, To begin the conversation, I would start with Dr. Um, Alagnanda. Ma'am, if I may ask you, the current methods of choosing our legislators through the current advancements of technology, where we use the electronic media or the electronic voting machines, along with the voter verifiable paper audit trail. Um, are we satisfied with the advancements of the technology when it comes to our election process, or do we still have a to and fro discussion about going to ballots? Is this a safe method to how we progress? Ma'am, if you may.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for that brief introduction and all. And I thank St. Joseph College for inviting me for this discussions. Speaking briefly about your question is whether the new methods are actually helping us. I truly believe that because we are closely working with the Election Commission of India for last 10 years with regard to the surveys and all, we involved with the questions related to the VVPAT EVM machines. We have the questions on them. When we ask the respondents, the voters in Goa, last time in 2017, I could see there were some kind of a apprehensions we noticed among the voters who expressed there is some kind of a doubt related to the EVM machines and all those things. But when we conducted recently, last year, the baseline survey for the Election Commission, somewhere the confidence in the EVM machine has increased. And the credit of this also goes to the Election Commission, which clarifies in the newspaper and through the social media and all to the people saying that no, it cannot be tampered at any cost because it is not related to any internet security. And personally, also, I feel because we also engage with a lot of discussions with the Election Commission of India and all. So they also, told us how it is safe to use the EVM machines. It cannot be tampered. But that is the thing. But political parties do have some kind of a reservation with regard to the EVM machines, especially when they lose the elections. So the question come more when they lose the elections and all. But yeah, these things have to go on because there are, the democracy. When we say the methods have to evolve, the things have to change. There might be new challenges and all. We need to respond to those new challenges and all. And this is how the process goes on. Like there is nothing called a perfect system which we are able to evolve. And that's why I think these kind of debates which you people are initiating, I feel are really very, very important that, we need to engage with these questions, especially youngsters as well as the academicians, practitioners, politicians. We need to engage into these questions and talk to each other and to make democracy more functioning and meaningful. Yeah, I hope.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your opinion and your kind words as well. Yes, Advocate Dia, ma'am. Do you think that elections are, I mean, the EVMs are really a problem when we lose elections? What do you have to say about that?
Sir, good afternoon, everyone. I am very much thankful for giving me this opportunity on speaking on this very important topic. Sir, I don't only go for it. It is a balanced situation. And secondly, today the topic of us is urgency in democracy, right, sir? So what I feel today, urgency in democracy is that participation of youth in democracy is very, very important. Because if you go to see what democracy is all about government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So the source of government is the people, which we have forgotten today. So awareness should be there among the youth. We should arrange awareness programs. Today the youth is unaware. They say, "Maka ki baat padna." So it should not be like that. Youth should be aware because youth is the future of the nation. Youth is the future of our state. So when the youth will equally participate into democracy, then in a true sense, we can say we are celebrating democracy.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Lakshmi, ma'am, if I may ask you, So we have evolved, we have transformed sort of a thing, or we have moved in the terms of technology. However, there are candidates who once upon a time had their names on ballot papers and they have taken an upgrade to the electronic voting machines as well, where they still are on the EVMs. And my question is, even though we have moved in times of technology, are we going to move in times of, or in terms of our candidates that have pretty much ruled Goa for quite a long time?
Okay. I'm going to try and answer this question a little differently from my other speakers. I first of all do not subscribe to the view that technology is a magic wand that can remove all our problems. I don't think technology at any stage is either value neutral or it is not susceptible to any kind of manipulation. Having said that, I'm not suggesting that electronic voting machines have not been effective. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm simply saying that we have to be critical about this naive confidence in technology and its magical properties in making us an evolved nation. Personally, I think what we have to be looking at is how we safeguard democratic practice and cultivate a democratic temperament. Democratic temperament and democratic practices do not arise either from the barrel of a gun or from the button, from a mouse or a click of a mouse or a button. It is to do with how we train ourselves right from school up to college and learn to be critically aware of the situation we find ourselves in. So I would like to rephrase the question. I would say, how do you safeguard democracy? Do you safeguard democracy by relying completely on technology, or do you safeguard democracy by cultivating a democratic temperament that goes far beyond technology? It goes to the classroom, it goes to how you read, it goes to how you learn to think. How many of us know our local councillor? How many of us have actually pinned him or her down to make him or her accountable for the problems we face in the constituency? What is our kind of civic participation in today's times? I think those are the kinds of questions we need to ask rather than putting a binary. Is technology helpful? Have we, have we made it? Have we progressed? I think the question really has to be refined a little bit. Speaking of progression, let me also say that we do take pride, and I think legitimately, that India is a functioning democracy till now. We don't know, but till now it's a functioning democracy in the sense we have elections more or less fair and free, notwithstanding some problems, but we still have elections. We do have the opportunity to elect our legislators. But is that enough? Is that really what we are talking about when we look at the urgency of democracy? Is democracy just one important carnival when we all meet, we all feel enthused, some of us use our vote, some of us don't, there's also voter apathy, and then for 5 years, we really are not involved in any kind of participatory process. I think it is here that we need to strengthen institutions. Technology can help us strengthen institutions. Digital governance can certainly help us. I mean, think about digitization that has taken place in land records, we access material. So don't get me wrong, I'm all for technology, but I'm simply saying that it is not just to be looked at as something out there. It has to be reinforced by constant democratic practice to build a democratic temperament for which we need to go back to the basics. So to safeguard democracy, we have to think about seriously a press, a free and fair press. We seriously have to think about our civil society. We seriously have to think about our education institutions. Do we really help our students to think originally, to think on their own? Do we facilitate critical thinking? Is there a tendency to simply shut down all curiosity? I think these are the kinds of fundamental structural questions that we need to ask instead of
Sure.
putting the debate as technology or not.
Sure, ma'am. Of course, we have a lot of things to talk about, and we will talk a lot about what you just mentioned, which are essential to be spoken about. And I understand that you mentioned critically that there is a gap after the elections where people do not participate. Maybe this could just be a start in order to bridge that. And the purpose of having this is for that very reason. Malin, if I may ask you, what is your opinion when it comes to the youth considering these forthcoming elections? And you can talk a little bit about the previous technological thing about as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we know, India is the largest democracy in the world today, with almost half or more than half of the population below 25 years of age, that is, we youth. The socio-economic future of India depends a great deal on how the youth engage with the democratic principles and values, and also effectively participate in strengthening the democratic institutions. When we consider elections nowadays, we see that the politicians only use the youth for elections, and then they are mostly forgotten and uncared for and hit a roadblock even while applying for many times government jobs. They go through all the rigors of applying and attending job interviews only to realize that the candidates were finalized even before the vacancy was advertised. It's time for our youth to ponder on this sad state of Goa. Talking about the electronic voting machines, there are advantages and there are disadvantages as well. The electronic voting machines help a lot when it comes to reducing the costs of paper printing, transportation, storage, etc. Because each person doesn't have to have his own ballot paper. It's all in one place. So many people can come to the center and vote and go. They don't need separate paper for each one. There are also disadvantages, you can say, where people feel the technology doesn't work sometimes. If you they feel if you vote for this person, my vote may go for another person. So there's always the fear. But then this same thing can be manipulated while using ballot papers also. So this fear is not only when it comes to EVMs, it is also when it comes to ballot paper voting.
All right. Thanks, Marlon. Before proceeding ahead, Dr. Alagnanda, if you mind suggesting to the people that it is okay to trust the electronic voting machine and it does not really happen the way it is, and then we move to the next question. Could you kindly do that?
Yeah, I just want to really suggest that EVM machines, because now they are connected with something called VVPAT, where you can actually verify whether your vote has gone to the person whom you have voted, and it's there available for you for some seconds, so you can verify that, and then that particular slip goes into a box, which is also again a sealed box. So in case in future, if anybody has a doubt on the EVM machine, they can actually ask for counting of those slips which are there in that box. I think this is a double check which already the election commission has taken care of. It's, if you are not trusting the machine, at least those slips which the voters have verified when they voted, that they have seen that their vote has gone to that particular person is there. So you can ask for the counting of that. And I think in some polling stations, if there are some doubts, this is also happening. They are verifying, counter checking whether both these things are tallying. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to a little bit more. We have people who are avoiding the elections or do not want to participate. We were just talking about the youth a little while ago. What are we doing sufficiently enough when it comes to the awareness campaigns in order to have people trust the process in the first place and also be a part of it enthusiastically? Dia ma'am or Alaknanda ma'am, if you all would want to say anything about that.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, ma'am,
Yeah.
Alaknanda ma'am.
Yeah. So when it comes to the youth participation, there are two aspects of it. As I think I have heard one of the youth representative here, definitely there is some kind of a frustration which we are noticing with regard to the youths, because definitely unemployment and many other issues are there which are not being very seriously tackled by the political leaders. That is one scenario which we have noticed. The another scenario which has been pointed out when we were on the field and we are having this kind of a group discussions with the youths also of different colleges in Goa. So one dissatisfaction with the youths expressed mainly is like the present political scenario. What is there? Like, the people are changing from one party to the other. So if you are going to vote for one political candidate, thinking that that person belongs to particular ideology or political party, and tomorrow you come to know that completely a switch over of that, somewhere the youths are feeling little bit frustrated about these kind of things which are happening. These are the things which need to be taken into consideration, and I think youth are now, they can actually play a major role, and I feel all the more reason for the youths to come out and vote in a large number and make a very conscious decision about whom they are voting, because nowadays, as the election commission has also mentioned that all the while filing the affidavits, candidates have to disclose their criminal records, assets, and all those things. And now the Supreme Court also has given a judgment saying, asking every political party to disclose, any candidate of theirs is having a criminal record. They have to make it available on their website. Every political party has their own website. They have to not only make it available on the website, but also they have to publish it in two regional newspapers of all these things. I think BJP I have seen, they have come out with a big advertisement, a full page, and in that where they are also mentioning like how many of their candidates are having the criminal record. I think these are the things somewhere the voters as well, the people have to take up some responsibility for making the democracy work, because sometimes it is also the personal interest of the voter which takes over the society's interest, and they vote for the candidate with whom they are getting the benefit. Somewhere voters also have to be behave responsibly, and I think youth with all these questions and frustrations, I think all the more reason for them to come out and vote for the candidate whom they can think that is good for the society. They can do something for the society. Yeah, thanks.
Sir, I would like to add what Alaknanda ma'am has said. We have seen on 15th September every year we celebrate International Day of Democracy. So this day is celebrated to promote and uphold the principles of democracy. It provides an opportunity for the world to view and review the state of democracy in the world. Now, when coming to the subject of participation of youth, yes, there is urgent need for the involvement of youth in the participation in democracy. So the youth should participate in political decision making. Urgent action and changes in the mindset if disillusioned and alienated youth to be engaged. It is a cringe to always link youth to the future, as young people not only have the power to define the future but also decide on the present. However, we have seen the youth is largely absent from formal decision making politics, and this has to be changed. And for this purpose, youth participation has a special meaning, and that a program to promote the young men and women involvement in decision making process is the urgent need of democracy. That's all, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Lakshmi ma'am, do you think that the youth is involved or can they do much better? And what is your opinion on that?
This is a bit of a difficult question. I can't speak specifically since I've been in Goa only for 3 years on a more permanent basis. I could speak much better about youth participation elsewhere in the state that I come from. But it's a little bit of a double-edged question. The fact is that the youth have plenty to be frustrated about. Of that, there is no lack. And as both my speakers have illustrated, there is unemployment, there is deep cynicism at the way in which jobs are announced, but recruitment takes place in the back door. So I'm sure there's plenty of reason for youth dissatisfaction and frustration. The question is, to what extent is the frustration going to be rechanneled by a commitment to the democratic process? So, is the youth disconnected from the democratic process? Is the youth really apathetic about electoral politics? Is there a cynicism like Ayaram Bayaram? There's one party here and gone tomorrow, another one tomorrow, and so why bother? Is that something which really affects the psychology of the youth? I don't know, since as I said, I can't speak for this particular state. On the other hand, we have seen youth consciousness coming into the fore on major issues in the last 3, 4 years. So it's not as if the youth are not responding to the crisis that the state or segments of the population are facing. Now, we may agree with the politics or not agree with the politics. We may see them as subversive and radical. But the fact is, you had Shaheen Bagh, which was, after all, engineered by a large segment of the youth. So I don't think to say that the youth are not interested in politics would not be quite right. The whole point is, does the youth have any hope and optimism in the present political system, which seems to be so utterly cynical? And that extends to all states. And I'm not singling out Goa here. I mean, Goa is a state that we've had to take pledges of loyalty not to defend, and so it's a bit of a laughing case now, but it's by no means exceptional. I think everywhere in the country we've had defections, problems, and there's no real commitment to an inclusive ideology. So, it's a double edged thing. I could only say that, on the other hand, every family, as far as I know, every middle class family will tell their child, don't do politics. Politics is a bad thing. Why are you doing politics? Just study, be a good student. So I think our own, we say a lot of things that you should do that and you should do that. Do we give them, or do we try and understand where the disconnect has happened between youth frustration and a completely corrupt, bankrupt political system? I mean, that's the question. And I'm glad that a college like yours is putting this up for discussion, because one way of dealing with it is to talk about it. Talk without fear, talk fearlessly. And, find out what's going on and what we can do. Both, I'm in my late 60s, but what we can do together with experience and youth to try and make a better tomorrow, because all of us do want a better tomorrow, whether it's the environment, whether it's the moral economy, whether it's freedom, all the aspects. We all want it. So, how do we do it?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Everything of what you just said, I agree to it. Marlon, please go ahead. I'm sure you have something to say about it.
I just would like to add to what Nam said about some youth participating in elections, some not participating. I feel from personal experience among my friend circle, we always have discussions on, like, now since we have got the right to vote for last year, we sit and discuss like what has been done. Among my friends, we always have these discussions, and we also have there's also always a doubt among us, like, now we are voting for some particular candidate, and we hope that he'll be elected by the others also, and he'll come up with a particular ideology of a particular party. That is what our peak is. But what happens is this defection take place, and it's kind of uh, against what we hope would happen. So that is something we really hope will happen less, because then election turned out to be a gamble, because it's very less of what we want, but it's happening more of what might happen, and that's what I would say. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Marlon, for your opinion as well. Um, uh, Dia ma'am, if I may ask you, just another lingering question about the youth. There are a lot of political parties who have come up and said about giving schemes to the youth, providing numerous various possibilities for the youth in creating jobs, etc., etc. And a lot of political parties have done that. Now, how does one believe which one they should kind of trust in going ahead, because there are a lot of other political parties who have said we'll do this for you, we'll do that for you. What is it that they need to consider in order to choosing the right options? Or
Yes, sir. So it is like, sir, that if you go to see, today's major problem is unemployment, unemployment of the youth. The political parties at the time of election, they come up with the manifestos. In the manifestos, they say we are going to give this much of employment, these schemes are for the youth. But in the true sense, then after the moment we vote these people, the person gets elected on the basis of the manifesto, on what he is going to focus for the rest 5 years. But practically, if you go to see, that manifesto is kept underneath for the remaining 5 years. So the 5 years is a big term. The future of the youth. Take for example a youth. Now the person is of 25 years of age. He is well qualified, waiting for employment. 25 years of age. Nothing is being done. Youth run here and there. All the schemes, everything. If you go to see, it is just fake promises. We are promised, only promises are made. But in reality, nothing is happening. The 5 years of the youth are wasted. So he comes to 30, again he has to wait. Again he has to vote. Again false promises. So by these the years are gone and gone and gone. When we look at politics, we say it is dirty business. I feel that right from our school, right from our home, we see that our home is the first school. So from our home, in our house, that thing should be made. Not everyone what you are going to become. If you ask a child, if you ask a youth, if you ask a student a question, what you are going to become, they will say, I am going to become a doctor, engineer, professor, advocate. No one will say that I am going to become a politician. So if you go to see everywhere, even if we are buying a phone, we will search, we will make a big research. But why don't we research about the person who will be representing us for the for the next 5 years? Our future is in that person's hand. What we do? Now it is a trend. The person who has got money, he gets elected, irrespective about the criminal background, what he is having, irrespective whether he is educated or not. That is the most requirement which has to be looked at. There are posts which are coming. Even if you want to become a driver, there is educational qualification. But if you want to become a politician, there is a prescribed qualification, because the people whom we elect, they are our representatives, because we are in a representative form of government. These people represent our interest. These people form the policies, lawmakers. When they don't have the actual education, what lawmaking, what policies will be formulated? So it is a very sad state of affairs. So for that, I actually feel all the youth should come together, all educated people should come ahead and participate into politics.
all right, thank you, ma'am. Alaknanda, ma'am, do you have anything to say when it comes to choosing a political party when they all have similar promises of helping out the youth and stuff?
Yeah, I totally agree with Divya ma'am when she said that youth need to come forward and take participation in politics. It's not like they just go on blaming the politician. Somewhere the initiative also should come. They should not think this as something. Most of the time it's seen as, okay, oh, it's a very dirty game. We don't want to be get involved into politics. Now, if everybody starts thinking like this, who is going to change? It is easier to be like, on the other side and start blaming. Okay, so and why not like participate and clean the things? It's very difficult, but somewhere the start has to be made, because that frustration what I could see nowadays among the youth and all, somewhere the youth should come together and form a political party or something like that and try to contest the elections. So some start should be done for these things, rather than keep on grumbling about no, like these politicians are not doing anything for us, we are not this thing. And at the end, we also have to take some responsibility because we are the one who are going to choose them at the end. So the people have to take up this responsibility. And for that, I totally agree with Divya ma'am. What she said is we need to really look into the background of all these candidates whom we are voting. And we have a lot of problem with regard to the political parties or candidates. They are changing their political parties once they get elected. Then why in the next elections again they are getting elected? So this is the question we need to ask ourselves. Again, we are going to vote for them. So what we are noticing in Goa, if we have seen last, from the beginning, especially after the statehood period, the kind of family Raj is increasing. Okay, so initially it was just one family members were a part of it. Now then it has increased to six family members. Now slowly it is going to nine family members. Okay, so it's also becoming a family business. Okay, so somewhere we need to break these things, and I think here not only youth, I think everybody has a major responsibility here, or what I could see, because democracy will function only with active, aware citizens. So that is something which I need to stress upon. Yeah,
All
thank you.
right. Thank you, ma'am. Lakshmi, ma'am, the earlier conversation that we were having, we had Professor Prabhakar Tingle, who was the former election commissioner of Goa, and he suggested that the conversation was about women into politics, especially in terms of the candidature. We see a very low number of female candidates contesting the elections. And he suggested that there could be reservations. What is your opinion in times of having reservations for this progressive era that we live in?
That's an easy question to answer. Having been involved in the women's movement for 30 years of my life, I think representation, special representation for women at all levels, particularly in political decision making, is something that I am committed to in terms of principle. How it can be translated into practice is another matter altogether, and it connects up with the larger problem that both my panelists have been talking about, that we should be taking greater interest. Of course, we should be taking greater interest. The question is how. I really believe that, as I said, keeping aside the defection and the nature of family politics that goes on, keeping that aside for the moment, and I don't want to make any specific comments about any particular political party at this point of time, I think youth in general and women in particular have to be much more sensitized to issue based politics. At the end of the day, have we enough and adequate conversation about issues that really matter to us? Why is it that despite all the evidence that we have about climate, we don't seem to really care about the kind of agenda that is brought on to the forum? Joblessness, unemployment, terrible inflation, serious environmental degradation are issues that concern all of us, not the educated few or the uneducated many. It affects all of us. And I do believe, while I do completely believe that you need a certain degree of responsible experience behind you, I'm not here saying that only the educated have the right to rule. I don't believe that. I think in rural areas you can have extreme practical wisdom that can come, not necessarily by a university degree. And I think we have to make a very clear distinction about the kind of politics that is dominant in a subcontinent like India, right? I mean, the laws and the policies are made by the bureaucrats. How it is marketed and sold out and reached to a constituency is the business of the politician. But we, as citizens, who are facing both the rhetoric of the politician and the governance of the bureaucrat, have to be doubly alert. And this is where I think we need to start thinking about the ways in which we want to elect our representatives. So, specifically to do with women, I do believe that it is time that we gave much greater visibility to women's issues. I'm not saying this only because I believe that women have the right to have certain equal representation. I'm not even saying that bringing women in will clean up the system. I have no such illusions. But I do believe that having been out of politics for so long, having not had representation, And even when representation happens, it's proxy, because at the end of the day, you are doing your father's bidding, husband's bidding, brother's bidding. I do believe that in principle, the idea of having representation for women is a good idea. So I would concur with the suggestion made by the gentleman, the former election commissioner, and I do think that it's another, but it's also very important to animate these good reforms with real implementation. You know, we've got all the best laws in the world. We've got everything on paper. We have laws. Who implements them? How do they get enforced? I mean, a simple thing like garbage collection, for which you have money allotted to a panchayat, doesn't get implemented. You go and have to fight, and when you fight in the panchayat, you are marked as one of those who is a troublemaker, and either you can either get it done or they'll be completely ignoring you. So, you know, it's not enough just to have a good policy being framed. It's a question of how effective our implementation and governance is.
That sounds really amazing, ma'am. We will talk up more about the laws on paper which are not implemented. I think that's one important aspect. But before we go there, Marlon, so when we talk about our literacy rate increasing, we still have candidates or are members of the legislative assembly governed by the less educated. And rightly said by Lakshmi ma'am sometime earlier that you don't really need a university degree in order to govern a state. Malan, but how do you think it is, or is it important to consider a candidate's education, especially when we come from a state like Goa? Is it an important criteria or can it be overlooked? Marlon, are you there?
Yes, sir. This question can be a little bit tricky because
Okay, so basically it is something like when we talk
it
about
is.
our
I
literacy
feel
rate.
it is. I feel it is important
Okay,
that we need candidates should have some proper educational background
okay,
because it gives them they'll have more knowledge about some particular thing or what they're supposed to do. But more importantly, we need them. What we need from them is service towards the people. That I feel is more important,
okay. Along with the people, it should also be the environment
along with leadership. Along with
and
leadership.
climate change, some of the very important things Lakshmi ma'am just mentioned. Divya ma'am, is there something you would like to mention about Lakshmi ma'am and Marlon said?
Yes, sir. Definitely. I would say education is very important because I have personally seen a voter comes with some document, or voter comes with some litigation papers to a politician, MLA. Sometimes the MLA doesn't know what is there written. He will just pass to his PA. PA is also unaware of it. And like this, the case of that particular person, voter is just lingering over that. It is just kept in the file. So what basically I think, suppose if there is a law minister, at least he should have some basic knowledge of law, what law is about, what is constitution, what are our fundamental rights, what are the directive principles of the state policy. Education minister, he should have some basic knowledge about education. When these people doesn't have, it is a sorry state of affairs. We had a standard pass minister who are education minister, law minister who are not having knowledge of law. So how can these people deliver service to us? It is about delivering system. Our representatives deliver us the system. They will deliver the services. When they doesn't have the knowledge what it has to be done with this paper, the person is come, they don't know. It is just like काला अक्षर भैंस बराबर, कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. So that basic knowledge, education is mandatory. This is what I feel.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Alexandra, ma'am, talking about education, we can have a word about it. However, we have a restricted voting system when it comes to our prisoners, but we have a lot of government officials, some of the very candidates who are criminals themselves. Do we see, and over decades of years, we are not talking about recent years, is this something that we have to live with for the years to come, or do you see something that may change in the near future?
Yeah, there are two, three points now. Actually, I wanted to go back to the question on women, if I'm allowed to,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please, please,
because I
please.
have picked 3 points related to the participation of women
Sure,
in
sure.
the elections, and I totally agree with Lakshmi ma'am when she said that the reservation is something which we are looking for, and why I tell you I'm talking about this is first thing when we look at women as a voter. Okay, so since 2002 till 2017 elections, and recently whatever the election commission data has come out, we could clearly see that there is an increase in the women voter percentage compared to men. So more number of women voters are voting. So there is an increase which we have seen. The secondly, when we look into the women's participation in the assembly and parliament, there is nothing much is happening. So we have seen hardly one or two women candidates in the Goa Legislative Assembly. Political parties are not giving them their party ticket to contest on their own. But one very good side of it, what I have seen during my studies and all, is independent women candidates number is more rather. So which also means that there are women candidates who are willing to participate, but they are not getting the tickets from the political parties. They are contesting as independents, and that makes it really difficult because usually party carries a lot of weight. There is a funding which is coming from the political party and all. So maybe that is also one of the reason, like they find it difficult. But one thing which is there, women as a political constituency has not emerged in Goa, not even in India. And I think there is, and here is where we need to think about reservation. So there are two things which I need to focus when we talk about reservation. We talk about incremental method of reservation and fast track mode of reservation. Fast track is something which comes by reservation, having a reserved seat for the women. Incremental method is like we hope that okay, there is everybody is equal, whatever the equal opportunities are given for the men, equally available for the women and all. And we are seeing this since almost 75 years of India's independence. The incremental method is not working out. It did not benefited the women to getting more women in the parliament or in the state legislative assembly. And I think and that is why I think we require a reservation policy because political parties are also reluctant to give the ticket. And we have proved by way of panchayat there are already reservation. Goa is still lacking. It is still with 33% reservation, while other states have gone ahead with 50% reservation for the women in the panchayat elections and all. And they are really doing very good job over there. And I think that's why I feel reservation for the women is must in the assemblies. That is the one aspect of it. So coming to your question on the literature, I look at from a very different point of view as a political scientist because when we look at democracy, we look at each and every individual as an equal citizen. We cannot discriminate a person as we are not discriminating a person as a voter. Okay, so the person who is not literate also has an equal vote, which also carries an equal weight, whatever the vote is there. Similar to the educated person, there is an equal weightage which has been given to the voter, then why not to the candidate? Okay, so a person who is not literate does not mean that they don't have a vision. Okay, so we have a educated candidate, but we know how much what they are doing for the state or what they are doing for the country. Are they different from? Is it that the education which is making difference here? It is not that the educated people who are in the seat of MLA or MP not misusing their seats. Then why we are putting it only on the question of education? Okay, it does not mean that I'm completely supporting, but what we have seen over the period, because we started in 1947 where the illiteracy rate was very, very high in India. And since then, after 75 years, slowly this literacy rate is increasing. And we have now more candidates who have some kind of a educational background. We have candidates who have a degree. Okay, so they are also now, we have the CMs with IIT, something like that. So that is also increasing. So somewhere we need to think, and this is a debatable issue. I feel when we talk about literacy rate, the perception may vary, and maybe my perception will be different from what other people might be feeling. But I personally feel that over a period of time, I think we may be able to come to a stage where everybody will be literate. Everyone will be a graduate person, depending on the surrounding. Only thing, we have to make these facilities available to everyone to take up to the education. They have to value that education has something very important to contribute. So we have to come to that stage. So automatically this question will be solved. Coming to the third question of criminal this thing. Uh, One thing, when we have a cases against, again from a political science perspective, when we have cases against a person, we are not considering that person as guilty until and unless there is a conviction, which has, there is a judgment which has been given. Because then anybody can put a case against a candidate whom they don't want to see them to come up for the elections and all. Only thing, now we have to blame somewhere our judicial system, which takes it long time, like 15 years, 20, 25 years, not giving any judgment. But recently, I think Supreme Court has given the order that when it comes to the criminal cases, it should be dealt with a fast track method, so that people are able to, like, decide whether they are really choosing the person with a criminal record or no, because the disclosing of the criminal records is not making much of a dent to the candidates who are actually contesting. It is a fast track method of solving these cases, I feel, is a necessity, so that once a convicted, you cannot, contest the election. So these are.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Lakshmi, ma'am, you have something
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah, I had something to add to what Dr. Srungare said, and I would completely agree with the fast tracking provision for um, women's representation. I think incremental reservation, we can't wait for so long. We've already waited. I don't think it's really made much of a dent. And the experience of having women's representation at lower levels of governance has actually been quite impressive. So I simply will reconfirm what I say about the commitment to women's representation at the political level. Speaking of education, literacy, this is a dicey question. Being a historian, and having seen how over time all kinds of qualifications were imposed on the democratic voting procedure. First, it was property was the basis of voting, property was the basis of being a candidate, and all that changes because we all basically are committed to the idea that everyone has the right to vote and everyone has the right to go for a political office. And therefore, one cannot, by default, make certain restrictions, lack of education being one. As I said, this is not to say that I am advocating illiterate candidates. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying that India is a very complex democratic society. Politics has evolved in a particular way in relation to several kinds of constituency. The political reality on the ground is much more complex than can be reduced to whether we should have an educated candidate or not. There are many more considerations that have to be factored in. And while it is our aspiration to want a fully literate, aware, responsible citizenry and society, I don't think we can make the lack of formal education as a stumbling block to becoming a candidate. So I would respect, if that were so, lots and lots of political parties, lots of segments of our population would never see the light of the day. The fact is that we have a proud record of affirmative action. We've had a proud record of protective discrimination. Unless we had that, we could not have achieved even what we have achieved. So why, without, I therefore don't want to be put into a situation saying, do you want educated candidates or not? I don't think that the question is that simple. I think we've got to go deeper. What bothers me most, what bothers me most is the bankrupt political leadership, no doubt about it. But what bothers me even more is that even when we know that someone's been a thug, someone's a gangster, someone's an extortionist, we still seem to vote for him. So, what is it about our social fabric that we have not learned to understand ethical from political power? Why is it that there is such a naked appreciation of power, the man with power, the woman with power, rather than seeing whether there is any basis for ethical governance. This bothers me because I think as a society, with all the institutions, we've actually failed. So it's very easy for us to be totally rejecting of the political class. We all do that, and we have to do that because it's just so cynical and so annoying that you have to do it. On the other hand, I would like to draw attention to us. What is it that we as a society have failed to do? Why is it that we have not been able to translate simple ethical considerations of right, wrong, good, bad, inclusive, tolerance, equity? What is the problem? What has stood in our way? I think those are the questions that a participant are really
Sure, ma'am. Sure. We can take a few questions. There's still a very short time. So, moving on to a couple of more. Dear ma'am, if I may ask, so there is still an existing perception about once if done a favor, it's a lifelong obligation to return the favor. And this has been present over the years amongst people. Uh, is it good for the democracy in the future to hold this perception of a lifelong obligation to show allegiance to either a particular candidate or a particular political party, or do we need to think differently?
Yes, sir. I think that we need to think differently because over here, if you show a political allegiance to a particular political party, ideologies of the political parties keeps on changing. So if you are voting to that particular party means you are voting for that ideology which is postulated by that particular party. Here, in a democratic society, representative form of government, we need to see it is called laissez-faire, welfare state. We are a welfare state. So, for the welfare of the citizens, we need to look into the representatives who are contesting elections, whether they are going to do the welfare of the society, whether they have that capacity, whether they have that capability. So, from my point of view, in spite of looking at the political ideology, that is the political parties, we have to look at the person who is contesting the election. We have to vote the person, looking at his caliber, looking at his capacity for bringing a reformation, for bringing a change in the society. I would also like to add to Lakshmi ma'ams with regard to the empowerment of the woman. If you go, we are talking about empowerment of woman from ages. Women being the 50% of the population, are there how many women parliamentarians can we see now? There is hardly a number. Why woman is not encouraged into politics? It has to be done from home. If a woman is contesting this from the house, there should be support. A woman should support a woman. If a woman is contesting as an independent candidate, I have. It is my personal experience. I had contested election not to make a political career. I have a very good this my in I am doing very good in advocacy. I have also worked in Reliance Industries as a legal advisor for state of Goa. It is not for making a political career. Looking at all these things, what is happening, I thought that I had some vision. I have a vision for my state. So in order to do something, I contested as an independent candidate. But it was, I felt so bad. Women are not ready to support women. This is a very sorry state. When a woman is contesting an election as an independent candidate, first of all, women should come out because we are having 50%. 50% voting population is woman. Then why woman is not supporting woman? If you take a look about the political parties where there is a scope for women or for youth, now we have seen this election. What we have seen, MLA or minister is asking ticket for his wife. Then he will ask ticket for his son. We are having only 40 assembly constituencies. So how many we are going to accommodate in this state? So sir, there should be a change. There should be a change. So this change we have to bring right from the ground level. So this ground reality has to be changed. We have to move forward. We have to one the person and not the
Thank you, ma'am. Malin, would you have anything to say about our perception in terms of choosing a candidate? Is it a good idea to have a lifelong obligation to a particular party or a particular candidate. And I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. There is a certain allegiance towards a party for life, or towards a particular candidate for life, or a favorite done in the past. Is it appropriate? Is it relevant for our democracy in order to hold such perceptions? Could you briefly say that? And then we can speak our last question maybe. Malan?
Yes, sir. So I feel when it comes to allegiance to a particular party, uh, suppose some candidate is been in part of a party for a long time. Now, when we vote for that candidate, basically we vote for that party. So sometimes that person may not be performing up to his best potential, but we still vote because we are suppose we want that party to come into power. We don't want any other party. That's what happened many of times. So when it comes to when we say allegiance to the party, it's not always that we vote for the person because he's doing a good job. It's because we sometimes do not want the other person to come into power. It's not always that he's doing a good job. So that mentality is there a lot of the times among people.
Something that needs to change. Thank you, Marlon. Last, and we can keep it as short as possible. So, Alaknanda ma'am, before election, it is always about the people. After elections, people are not considered in decision making. Their views are undermined, is why we see a lot of protests that occur after elections. Do people keep this in mind before entering elections about the past, or is it forgive and forget, and then we see what happens in the future? How do you think people should think of it at the moment?
Yeah, true. It's very true that when we see people's participation, the participation is very high when it comes to voting. But the participation in between election, we don't find so many people coming out and participating very actively for various reasons. Okay, so it's called as tragedy of commons. Like if there is a common cause, we find it very difficult for the people to come together and fight for that cause. Even if the protests which are happening, we can see some thousands of people who are participating, but they fail to gather that kind of support which was there. Maybe many people are having the opinion, but until unless there is a support for that particular movement, that will not catch the attention of the politicians, because politicians are worried about numbers. So the moment they see more numbers, more people supporting that particular cause, definitely they have to take that into consideration, which happened in case of SEZs in Goa. It happened in case of scrapping of regional plan 2011 in Goa. It happened in case of Malayalam project, which was there in Goa. So what I could see is, in case of Goa, there we have seen this kind of a activism still alive. People are very much active in between elections also. There are large number of protests which are taking place, which is a very healthy sign of democracy. Definitely politicians don't want the people to be too much interfering in what they are doing. But it is the people who have to take the decision that no, they have to keep the politicians accountable, because they are there to serve us, to serve the people. And last one point which I just wanted to make, because we miss out on some kind of misinformation or fake news which goes on social media many a time, and people get distracted with that because it may be related to candidate, it may be related to political parties. In 2019, we have seen that this fake news or misinformation has spread from the political parties, because they wanted to dent the other political parties. We have to be a little bit careful about that, because social media use is increasing, political parties are using social media and all. So somewhere the citizens have to be aware of this aspect also. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear ma'am, if you have anything to add to it, and if you have any last closing remarks, if you would like to say.
Yes, definitely, sir. So it is like political parties, allegiance to the political parties. I would like to say we vote a particular person on the basis of that political party. We have seen now 10 people, they just defected from Congress party because we had voted to Congress candidate. And these people, after because of their personal interest, they defected and they joined BJP. So it is our moral duty to see that these people should not get elected again. Because if these people get elected, then they will take us for granted. So in order to stop this defection, anti-defection law we say, so to bring that law into full force, so it is our moral duty, it is our obligation, duty of the citizen towards the constitution, we say our fundamental duties. In order to stop this decision, these people should understand, if we defect and join other political party, we will not be elected again. So sir, in the preamble we say, we the people of India, we means we are the power, we are the source of power. So we have got the power, show that power. Don't only fall prey for the money which is given at the day of election. These people are just distributing. We have seen so many, so much of money is scored by the flying squads. So why we are selling our votes? Why you are selling yourself for a petty 2,000 or 5,000 rupees for 5 years? Just calculate how much it is per day you are getting. You should make assure that the person who is representing you, the person who wants your vote, you are giving yourself for 5 years, your future for 5 years in that particular hand, that person's hand. So for this defection, we are also equally responsible, because the people, these people get defected and again we vote for them, they get elected. So they have taken us for granted. So sir, this has to be changed. We can change it. So it is we who has to change it.
Thank you, ma'am. Lakshmi, ma'am, there's a lot to talk about, but if you
No, we don't have the time. Just to say that I enjoyed the conversation. I will, however, say that allegiance is a complicated thing. We can all feel committed to an ideology, and that might change, might wax and wane, and we can remain more or less loyal to a cause the way in which we have grown. So I don't think that allegiance to a particular ideology that appeals to you is necessarily wrong. But I think the kind of opportunism that characterizes our politics and what Dia just mentioned now, this sort of constant defection, it is time that the people showed that we are the locus of power and we do exercise the vote. So exercise it wisely. But as I said, keep protest and dissent alive all those 5 years when the government is in power. Don't forget your democratic responsibility, whether or not somebody has got elected in the legislature or in the parliament. So that's what I'd say. But I do want to thank the college for having given me it's been a very good and interesting conversation. So good luck with more such conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Marlon, do you have any last words to say? Kevin, we will take your question, but Marlon, if you have any last words to say, please go ahead.
I would like to thank St. Joseph College for giving me this opportunity. It's my first time participating in such a debate. I was hesitant at the beginning, but then Sir Joseph convinced me that I would do a good job. I would like to thank you for that, sir.
All right, thank you, Marlon. Kevin, please, if you have any question, go ahead. All right, okay. If you have no questions further, I would, yes, yeah,
Sir, yeah, I would, whatever discussions today we had, it is a very fruitful discussion. So taking it further, I am planning for, through my foundation, their foundation, to do this practically, to take awareness programs. So I want sir support of intellectual people. I want support of your college. All intellectuals, if we come together, we can make wonders. So I want to take it practically and do it on the ground and show the power of the people, power of the youth, and power of the woman. I am
sounds amazing, and we are up for it, ma'am. We will do it.
looking forward to work with you all.
It will be amazing as well. Thank you, ma'am. There's a lot to speak about again, a lot of questions that we have left unanswered and still ambiguous, but a lot more moments to speak in the future we will have. Thank you all the panelists for your time and your wise information. And I hope we make a wise decision when it comes to the upcoming elections to have a right governance. And I hope all our conversations will be fruitful. Thank you each and every one of you for your participation. Thank you again, all your panelists. Kevin, you have
Kevin
a
has
quick
a
Thank
question.
you.
Yes,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Kevin
I
has a
have a
question.
question.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kevin, quickly go ahead, please.
Yes, so I'm a student of Xavier's, MAPSA, and um, The thing is, I live in Bamboli, right? And there's every day, like when I go for my runs in the morning, I see this garbage pile just at the side of the road. So the thing is, I've asked one of the person who picks up the garbage there. His name is Ramesh, and he comes there every day, I think, with his wife. And I asked him like why is there so much garbage here? And he told me that because of the plant which was closed in Saligao, right? I think it is Saligao. They closed the plant, so everyone's just bringing the garbage and dumping here. So he told me I asked him what do you do and all, like what do you do with the stuff, and like he told me like he takes whatever he can salvage and he sells them for scraps. So the thing is now, I would like to bring awareness to this problem, right? Like I have put it out like on social media. Like I think I put it twice on social media regarding this garbage patch. The thing is, I'm really scared. Like as a student, I have my own like studies, right? I have like as students in general, like we have our own stresses, right? We have our studies, then we have relationships, then different things in our lives going on, right? And then if you like go into bringing up these problems like the garbage problem, right? It's an additional stress. So like what can be done in terms of that? Because um, like my parents especially, like they tell me don't bring up this thing, like you're simply going to create additional stress for you.
So Kevin,
Yeah,
let me, I think I got a question and I will
yeah.
take the opportunity on behalf of the other panelists to answer this. Garbage problem undoubtedly is one of the biggest problems our state is facing, have faced and will face for the near future. I can assure that we will have a special conversation on garbage management in the near future, and we will keep this question. And I'm sure Lakshmi ma'am would also like to be a part of it when we
Oh,
have it.
yes. Oh, yes. I have lots to say with lots of stories.
So we will have that conversation again, Kevin. Until then, you keep making people aware of what you do. You're doing a good job, and keep continuing this. When we have the next conversation, I'm sure you will be notified about it, and we can talk more about it if that's okay with you. For now, I think we can close this panel, and thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye
Have a
bye.
good
Bye
day.
bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye, all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.